Hello, this is a 2000 Saturn SL2, and as you can see, you have the check engine light coming on, right? Over here you had the oil light, but that went off because just coming up on time to change the oil. 198,000 miles. Why is the service engine light on? Well, you can see it's a P0401, and that is exhaust gas recirculation, EGR, flow insufficient. Now this is a DTC, or diagnostic code severity number 2 of 3, repair immediately, but there's really nothing wrong with the car. As you can see, almost all of these are green. Okay, so these are for your IM monitoring status, your EVAP, your EGR, your catalytic converter. In order to get your car to smog in California, all those have to be green. You can have one that's not green, and usually the EVAP is the one that doesn't change. But as soon as I clear these valves or change anything, those will go back to not green, they'll be red, and then they have to clear again. But I'm not going to be able to sell the car or pass smog with a check engine light on, and it's the EGR valve. So I'm going to turn this off, head over here. This is the EGR valve. This port here goes to the intake side, and this port here opens and closes on this plunger. This is an electronic valve, so it has electronic connection here. So that plunger opens and closes from the exhaust side. Now, what is an EGR valve? Exhaust gas recirculation. All right, starting with the front of the car. Air comes in, goes in through the air box, goes through here, and goes down to this area here, which is called the throttle body, the throttle or the gas pedal, right? So when you press on the gas pedal in this car, it moves a cable which delivers fuel, right? Fuel mixes with air. So the air comes in through the air filter, mixes with the fuel, goes in through here. This is called the intake manifold. It's right down here. You can see these are called the fuel injectors. So those are electronic fuel injectors. That's the caps for them. Here's the spark plugs. Air, fuel, spark. Then you have combustion. Well, after you combust the gas and it presses up and down the pistons and all that, it's got to come out the exhaust manifold. So this is a cast iron exhaust manifold. Unfortunately, these cars have a ABS or plastic intake manifold. One of the problems with these is that intake manifold plastic portion here tends to crack or break at the seam and leak. So you have the air fuel mixture coming from the throttle body, mixing air and fuel, going into each one of these fuel injected controlled spark plugs, and the combustion. So that's the intake manifold, but that portion of it over there is also plastic, and that tends to leak, and that's where the water or radiator fluid that cools the system and flows through the whole system goes in and out. Part of it comes around over here and goes in here, and when you start to leak fluid, it can be the case that what's leaking is either the radiator, right, at the front of the car, that is partly air cooled but also water cooled or radiator fluid cooled, is leaking through this intake manifold. I have another video on how I was able to repair this because it was leaking, and I did not have to replace the whole intake manifold. In any case, the car runs great, except for one thing. This EGR valve was replaced recently, so I'm warrantying it to see if it's possible that it's a bad valve. Very easy to replace. Disconnect your electrical. You have 2 bolts down there. Now, the older EGR valves were not electronically controlled, and it is possible that because this is not an actual Saturn OEM, or what's called original equipment manufactured part, that the range of electronics in this valve is slightly different than what the car requires. And it is possible that the computer needs to be reset. So one of the things you want to do when you replace a part like this is you disconnect the battery, leave it disconnected for at least 5 or 10 minutes. It's a good idea when you're working on anything electrical to disconnect the battery. But if you leave the battery disconnected for a good 5 or 10 minutes, drains out the electronics, resets the car, all right, drains the static electricity that's in there that's holding the charge, and then the car starts over again, resetting the electronics, and maybe this will clear and stay cleared. So I got to return this old one and send them back the new one. Now, the repair that I have for the intake manifold includes this nipple here, which has epoxy all over it. It has a piece of tubing going over the brake that was in the nipple, and then it has clamps on it to hold the leak inside this nipple and the new hose on there. Okay, so that's another repair. And if I wasn't able to do that by cleaning off that nipple and sticking that tube over it and epoxying it down, I would have had to take this complete intake manifold off. That's an all-day job. You have to do a lot of work, pull this whole engine forward with some straps, take all that stuff off, put the new intake manifold on, cut part of it off, the new one, and then put a special adapter on there. It's a pain. All right, so that's hot to touch. This is the gasket, okay? Doesn't want to come off so easily, so I need a pair of pliers. You do need a gasket. Okay. Here's the new gasket, and I did put that stuff on there, which maybe it doesn't need. In this case, you have a razor blade, so you can clean off the surfaces with the razor blade. I'm going to do some of that. You can see it's not that difficult. Okay, this here. Let's see if that shows what I'm doing. But I need to focus on what I'm doing here. Now, the reason why these sometimes don't work is quite simple. The exhaust gas recirculation takes unspent fuel that comes out of the exhaust. So after it sparks, not everything sparks perfectly, sends some of the exhaust gas back through and burns it again. Not all of it, but just a small amount of it. And then the valve opens and shuts, allowing that to take place. Now, imagine you're combusting air and fuel, and you get the smoke and exhaust and all the stuff that's in gasoline and catches on fire, and then that stuff ends up coming out of the exhaust manifold. A small amount of it travels through this area, right through here, and comes up through there. Now, if I was to turn on the car right now, which I could do, air would come out of that. That lets me know that it's not completely plugged. So if I was to start the car, it would make a very loud noise, as you heard air coming out of here. Pop, 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 pop. Okay, so that's open, and I can't get it any cleaner. I can't run a cable or anything through there, but it's not completely plugged up. So it is the case sometimes that in the exhaust, it's all plugged up with soot, which is basically like charcoal, and then that passageway doesn't run, and the exhaust gas recirculation system cannot recirculate because there's no air going through it. The other part is, if I was to run cleaner, like throttle body cleaner, through here, it goes up and then it goes down and then it goes over through there and comes into the back of the throttle body down a little lower. And if I spray enough throttle body cleaner in there, and I was able to run pipe cleaner and some other kind of stuff through there, and throttle body cleaner ran through there, so I know that passageway is open and I know this passageway is open. My guess is that the exhaust gas recirculation valve itself is not running in the correct range, and that may mean that the PCM power control module or ECM electronic control module or the car computer might need to be updated software wise, might need to it might be out of range. This I have to return because I was able to warranty it. So this is going to go on here, right? Pretty simple. Okay. Yeah, I should have taken this thing off. And I'm not putting any gasket maker on there. I just decided I don't need it. It's not that important. This 10 millimeter. Okay. And I should have disconnected the battery while I was doing this, but I forgot. It would have reset everything. Okay, basically I'm gonna do that. Tighten this one up. Doesn't have to be super tight. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect the battery because I do want to reset the system. And by connecting this to this, it will help drain the battery. Okay, so I'm gonna basically show how simple that is. What it's gonna do is drain the electricity in the system so that the computer will reset. A lot of people show these videos, and all you're basically doing when you do this is getting all the extra electricity that's inside the system to discharge, because there's what's called static electricity in the system. Okay, here we go. Come on, man. Here we go. Come on. I'm trying to connect these two pieces right here. I may go back to the back of the car, and I may have a piece of metal. Usually I have something like a coat hanger or some kind of metal in the car to connect these two things. but in this case I don't think I do. So I might be able to just use a screwdriver. Man. I have a dog, so where's my dog? There he is. All I want to do again is connect these two pieces of metal, because what I'm going to do is discharge the electricity. Now again, when you're working with, okay, it can be as simple as doing something like that right there. Here's what I'm going to do. This is not a huge deal. Not a huge deal. Okay. So you have metal here touching and metal there touching. And so all I'm going to do is leave that for a few minutes. This piece of metal connects that piece of metal. And by doing that, I'm discharging, hopefully, discharging the system. All right, as ridiculous as that is, I don't have a piece of wire, but this to this for a few minutes will discharge the electrical, drain it out, and this will reset. When it resets, this might reset. So all I've done here is this piece. This is my electrical. All right. All right. And quick word about batteries. You don't want to connect the powers negative, positive, because if you jump these two together, the battery could explode, it could get sparks. One thing you want to do is make sure this is clean, the surfaces are clean, the metal surfaces are clean, so you get all your electricity to there. By the way, for those of you who don't know this, some basic stuff, the battery has to be powered in order for you to turn the ignition, get the car to run. You have an alternator, and the alternator actually generates power, and the alternator charges up the battery, and basically the car runs off the alternator, and then the battery is only 12 volts. The alternator should generate around 14 volts. If you start to have electrical problems, battery's going dead, lights are flashing, difficulty steering when you're driving or anything else, it's probably your battery. And you always just start by making sure your connections are tight and cleaning off the connections. There's a little tool for that. Let me see if I have one. It's right here. You use that to clean off the battery posts if you have them. And you use this little brush that's in here to clean off the different metal components. Right. So that's already clean. I've already done all that stuff, but somebody I know recently had a lot of car problems and wanted to sell their car, which was fine because it kept going dead. Turned out it was corrosion that just was blocking the electrical flow, and the battery kept going dead. Person wanted to sell the car. There was really nothing wrong with the car. It was just literally a bad battery connection. Let's see. I think that's about enough. So that should be drained enough. It only takes a couple minutes. All right, stick this thing back on there. You want to be careful when you put these on. Make sure they're on straight. You always hand tighten them at first. Make sure you get at least a few revolutions while it's hand tight. Don't over tighten these because that metal in there is lead, I believe, so it's gonna strip fairly easy. Lead is a soft metal. Not too tight. Very unprofessional. Using a pair of pliers for this. Anyway. Okay. Tight enough. All right. I think I've got all that stuff taken care of. Go back in here and start the car, and you'll see what happens when I start the car. Make sure I'm out of gear. Starts right up. Check engine light goes off. However, the check engine light may come back on. That's one way to clear a check engine light. So people who are selling cars often know, disconnect the battery right before the person shows up. No check engine lights. Everything's clear, right? Everything looks good. And what you have is no diagnostic codes. So I'm gonna disconnect this and then reconnect it. And let's see if it pulls up any codes. It may have cleared the codes just by disconnecting the battery. So you have to be very careful not to get cheated into thinking the car doesn't have anything wrong with it when you just saw it may have something wrong with it, which means it may not be able to pass smog. Just because there's no check engine light and just because there's no codes doesn't mean there's not something wrong with the car. It could be something seriously wrong with the car. All right, so no powertrain DTCs or freeze frame data. So in other words, it appears clear. However, you notice all of these, right? The EVAP, the EGR, catalytic converter, the O2 sensors, all of it now has to reset. So I have to drive the car a certain way, certain number of miles in order to get this stuff to clear. This EVAP, by the way, it's been red for a month and finally it cleared. The EVAP in California, you can have that not clear as long as it's the only one. They can take forever to clear. Let's see. I think that's about it. Okay, so review. We had check engine light. We had P0401, which is an EGR code, insufficient flow. Changed the EGR valve, changed the gasket, disconnected the battery, reset the system, hopefully. And if that check engine light doesn't come on, and then these all clear green, then I have a car that can pass smog, that passed smog, by the way, 6 months ago, and won't pass smog now only because that check engine light wouldn't shut off. The numbers were good, I just can't do it because in California, those are the rules. So that's it. Good luck.